Continuing with Computer Science AS Level 9618, today we're talking about licenses in topic 7.1. So let's take a look at the learning targets to know what we should be looking out for. So today we need to show an understanding of the need for copyright legislation, show understanding of the different types of software licensing, and justify the use of a license for a given situation. Now the licenses to include, we're going to talk about the Free Software Foundation, the Open Source Initiative, specifically the 10 principles or rules they came up with, Shareware license, commercial software, and also we're going to throw in freeware just to understand how it's different from free software. So let's jump in with copyright. Now, like literature, music, articles, and videos, software is also protected by copyright. When you purchase a piece of software, there are some rules that must be followed. Like, for example, you cannot make an illegal copy to sell or give away, and that's called piracy. It cannot be used on a network or multiple computers unless you have a multi-use license. You cannot use coding from copyrighted software in your own software and then claim it as your work. You cannot purchase the software and then rent it out to others, and you have the use of the name of copyrighted software. You cannot use it on other software without agreement to do so. So let's talk about some of these licenses. And there are various types of licenses that accompany software, and each license allows or limits things you can do with that software. And some of these licenses, and these are the ones we're going to talk about today, commercial software license. There is also free software license. There's a freeware license, which is not the same thing as free software, and there is a shareware license. So we're going to be talking about those today, and we're going to start with the one that everybody's pretty familiar with, which is a commercial software license. Software is available to users for a fee. So pretty much if you pay for it, you are purchasing that software with a commercial software license. The fee covers the license for one genuine copy to be used on a single device. Now, when we say a genuine copy, we mean one that has not been copied, one that we didn't make a copy of it. It is an authentic product. It comes straight from the retailer. Now, if multiple users need access, you can purchase a multi-use license. On some occasions, a free version can be offered if the user purchased an earlier version of the software. So even if a free version is offered later on, you still made a purchase of an earlier version of the software. Now, commercial software is protected by copyright, and none of the code can be used without getting consent from the copyright owner, because it is the code as well as the software that is copyrighted. All right, so let's talk about free software. And free software is not the same as freeware. A lot of people use these terms the same. They interchange them. They are not the same. There are some slight differences, which is why I think it's important to go over the difference between the two so you can understand what free software actually is. The Free Software Foundation and the Open Source Initiative, they're nonprofit organizations promoting benefits given to users that include running programs, copying the programs, and changing and adapting the software. Now, the Free Software Foundation and the Open Source Initiative came up with 4 freedoms for users, and users can do these things without permission. They can do it right away. They don't need to get permission. The first one is they're allowed to run the software for any purpose, and we mean legal purposes, not breaking the law. They can use it for any purpose they want to, as long as it's not breaking the law. They're allowed to study the code and modify it to meet their needs. They're allowed to redistribute copies of the software to friends and family. They're allowed to distribute code modified by the user to friends and family. So you have a lot of freedom here, which is why the Free Software and Open Source Initiative came up with it. Even though you can do these things, there are some rules that you must adhere to. So there are some rules with free software. You don't have unlimited freedoms, but there are some guidelines. You cannot add source code from another piece of software unless it is free software or open source. So you cannot take a commercial software, take code from that, and put it inside the piece of a free software. You can use source code to copy other software protected by copyright, which is what we were just talking about. Adapt source code to infringe upon copyright laws that protect other software and use the source code to produce software that is deemed offensive by third parties. If it's deemed offensive by third parties, you should not be using it. All right, moving on to the free software foundation and the open source initiative. So the syllabus mentions these specifically, so there's no better way than to talk about what they came up with. The Free Software Foundation focuses primarily on what the recipient of the software can do legally. The open source initiative focuses on consequences offered by the four freedoms that both organizations agreed on. Now, the aim is to provide development that is collaborated on by the users. And they have 10 principles that the open source initiative adheres to ensure their philosophy. And we're going to go over those 10 principles real quick. So the open source initiative principles, there are 10 of them. So let's go ahead and go through them real quick. Number 1, free redistribution. The license of the software program shall not require a royalty or other fee for a sale. You're allowed to redistribute it for free. Source code. The source code must be included in a compiled form, must be included as well. The source code must be in a form in which a programmer can modify it. It can't be in intermediate form. So the source code is available as well as a compiled version. Number 3, is the derived works principle. The license must allow modifications and derived works. So it must allow to be distributed under the same terms as the license of the original software. Number 4, integrity of the author's source code. The license must allow the distribution of software built from modified code. What that means is if you modify the program, you're allowed to distribute it. Number 5, no discrimination against fields of endeavor. The license can't restrict making use of the program in a field of endeavor. This means you can't restrict someone using it in a business or even genetic research. If they want to use it, they can. That is the 5th principle. All right, number 6, no discrimination against persons or groups. Doesn't discriminate against any person or groups of person. That's pretty self-explanatory. Number 7, distribution of license. The program has all rights attached even when it's been redistributed without an additional license being needed. Number 8, the license must not be specific to a product. The rights attached cannot depend on being part of a particular software distribution. All parties who the program is redistributed to should have the same rights to those granted in conjunction with the other software program. Number 9, the license must not restrict other software. You can't restrict other software distributed along with licensed software. You can't start, stopping other programs from working. The license must not insist that all other programs must be open source, released on the same medium. So if it's released the same way and yours is open source, meaning you can see the source code, doesn't mean that all other programs have to be open source. And number 10, the license must be technology neutral. So this means no provision of the license can be based on any one technology or style of interface. It doesn't have to be any one technology. It can be whatever you want it to be. So that is open source. You can see the source code. The Free Software Foundation says, hey, you can modify that source code. You can see it. As long as you follow those 4 rules, you're good to go. So if that is open source and free software, what is freeware? Well, freeware, users can download the software for free. There's no fee associated with using the software. And you may be saying, isn't that free software? And no, it is not. And this is why it's important, I think, we go over freeware, even though it's not included in the syllabus, is to really understand what free software is. Freeware is protected by copyright laws. Free software is not. You're allowed to, study and modify the code. You're allowed to redistribute it. With freeware, you're not allowed to do that. The user is not allowed to modify or even study the source code. You're not even allowed to see it. The user will usually click a checkbox saying they understand the terms and conditions. So that is the difference between free software and freeware. And that brings us to our last one, Shareware. And Shareware used to be pretty popular. You can still find a few companies that use it today, but users are allowed to try out some software free of charge for a trial period. At At the end, the author will request that you pay a fee if you wish to continue using it. Most of the time it's going to be restricted. You're not going to have full access to the program. A lot of people who like to burn DVDs of their own movies, not pirated movies, they'll usually put a watermark over the video until you pay for it. That is a form of shareware. Now, trial versions sometimes are not full functioning, and the disabled functions do not become available until the fee is paid. Now, once you pay the fee, free updates and help will be provided to you, assuming the company offers that. This software is protected by copyright laws, and users cannot use the source code in any of their own software without permission, but if you get written permission, you can. That's going to be it for this video. If you find this video helpful, please make sure you like the video. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe, help the channel grow as we release more videos. We'll see you guys in the next one.